So I believe we're live here on week 3 of the OpenFlip introductory course on Flip Learning. This week's topic is April's favorite topic, which
is intentional content.
Excellent. So we have April, as you can see, and we have Miguel coming in, and Christine just joined us. So I'll let Miguel and Christine quickly say hi, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Hello.
Hey, Christine, good to see you again.
How's it going?
Excellent. Excellent. I'm on vacation.
Sweet.
Broadcasting live from my house, and I even have internet today.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll see how it holds out. Miguel?
Hello.
Good morning, or afternoon, I guess it is now.
Yeah.
So why don't we just jump right into the topic, intentional content. So I find this, I don't know if it's like not my favorite. My favorite's definitely the P, but we'll get to that next week. I think it's hard for people to wrap their heads around, and I think it's the hardest one for some teachers because it involves the biggest change and therefore the biggest possible benefit in terms of gaining back some of their time. So why don't we defer to April here, who this is her favorite topic.
This is my favorite. Absolutely it is, because it's something that I try to even, I think it's a good question for teachers all the time to be asking is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it effective? Is it not effective? And if it's not effective, then why the heck do I keep doing it? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And I think sometimes in education, that's kind of what we default to because just of the time and other things that are expected of us. So, for me, I and P kind of go together, but that's what. That's why I'm really passionate about this intentional content. Is that, that the teacher, it is an investment in time. I'm not going to lie. And upfront, well, actually, a constant investment in time. But like you said, Ken, the rewards are just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it's especially a good point there. You talked about reflecting on what we're doing and whether what we're doing is really effective for our students. And this is our reflective time for much of us, especially the K-12 group, who this is their in-between years. For me, it's the in-between semester, but I also get that in December. What are you thinking, Christine, there?
Well, I'm listening. Of course, warning bells go on because, as you know, in any institution, teachers are just piled on with demands, and the time that you need to devote to do the intentional content tends to kind of go to the wayside, and teachers are strapped and like spread too thin. So that's where my head is going, like, how do we make it really clear, especially as a first-time flipper, everybody's doing it, how do we create that safe space for the time that teachers need?
Well, I think one of the things, this is April, one of the things that we have talked about for years, and we've kind of gone off and on, and Ken, you maybe can speak more to this, is that we can't just, it has to be, it takes a village, and that's kind of a hokey phrase, but intentional content is not simply you doing everything alone, and that's really important, I think. You don't have to curate. You can create or curate, and there's some great places to curate from, and there's some great people to collaborate with. I think that sometimes teachers feel that if they don't create it, or they have to reinvent the wheel themselves every single time for it to be theirs, and that's not true. There's some great curation tools and resources out there, and I know, Ken, that's something kind of really close to your heart too.
And I think sometimes we think that we have to create it all ourselves, and we don't. Although our students tend to like seeing us on the video or our opinions, and maybe some way to adjust at a micro level, take the content that you're still using right now, make it a bring it home, create some activities around it, but also record a 5-minute clip about what your thoughts are on the piece, and then decide whether you want to give that to them before or after in the reflection part of your activity. I always flip-flop between whether I want to give them my opinion first, because if I give them my opinion, then they think that's the right opinion, and that's always dangerous.
Yeah, as far as intentional content as well, I mean, I know that my students, sometimes they like to see me on the video, but I mean, I found some, like, I'm an English teacher, so, you know, I found some amazing lectures online from like MIT OpenCourseWare. And, you know, to be able to listen to, you know, a professor from, you know, that level of institution giving, you know, a 15-minute overview, let's say, of Julius Caesar from Shakespeare. For some reason, the students will listen to that and they're enthralled, you know, because they're right there. I'm in the high school seniors, so they're like ready to go to college. So this kind of helps them see a little bit, if that makes sense, what's coming down the pike. So I think, especially like Christine said, for those first-time flippers, you are overwhelmed. I mean, even as a teacher here in the U.S. and been flipping for a while, I'm still overwhelmed. And that's where I think, Ken, like your idea of, you know, curating and then adding onto it, or individualizing it, personalizing it, because I know personalized learning is a huge movement as well. Personalizing it for your students would be kind of a nice hand-in-hand to give someone so they don't feel like they're sinking, if that makes sense.
Right. Thoughts there, Christine or Miguel?
I'm good.
Okay, because one thing I'm also, I mean, this comes up more in the P, in the personal learning network or personal learning environment, and where there's so much out there that's accessible to us to jump on and use in our classrooms, that really reaching out to the community, whether it's through Twitter or Facebook or just browsing Pinterest to find. I mean, Pinterest isn't just for wedding planning. There's awesome educational resources in there.
That is true. I actually just turned my husband onto Pinterest because he's looking for patches for his his vest for his Harley Davidson. And he did not believe me that you could find that on Pinterest.
Or the Harley riders are on Pinterest. Awesome.
That's yeah. So now
true.
he's enthralled. So yeah, see, there's great education there too.
Excellent. Little known facts.
That's right. I think intentional content as well is not just the material that you're delivering, but I think it's the material that you're asking your students to create.
Right.
I think that both of those things kind of fall in this intentional content. So I think, and I know Cheryl and Andrew talked a little bit about this as well, you know, examining, you know, what does homework look like? What is required of your students? Why are you asking them to do that? You know, what's the, you know, beginning with the end in mind kind of thing and working back. I think that's also a piece of the intentional content.
Right. And while I'm going back to George Cours's book all the time, because that's what I'm reading right now, and that's why I changed one of the links to be one of his for this week. Oh, did I put the wrong link up there? Oh, I'm looking at link 2. That was dumb. What I was going to say is, delegating some of that teaching content or going out and research content to your students is just key. Coming up with that perfect lesson where if I spoon feed it to my students, they're going to really get it, really gets away from the point of what flipped learning is. You want to put the power and not just engage your students, but as George says, empower them. Give them the ability to take control of their education, but in a meaningful way, and not just you can do assignment A or B type thing, but actually have them go out and research something that's interesting to them. There it is. I had the wrong link. I was reading last week's and I was like, that seems like the wrong points, right? I create and curate relevant content for my students. I differentiate to make content accessible and relevant to all students. Prioritize concepts used in direct instruction for learners to access on their own, right? So I really struggled with this a lot when I was first flipping. I thought, I don't want to give the students the resource because there isn't one good resource. So I started thinking about, I'm going to curate a whole bunch of links, and then for each topic they'll have like 3 or 5 or crazy 10 different links for each topic or theme. And then I got to that point and I thought, wow, my students are freaking out because they can't read all of them or watch all of them, and they can't choose which one. And then my pendulum tends to swing completely the other way, where I just give them no resources and have them go out and look for themselves and then help guide them. So there's just, I struggle with that every day.
Oh, I think you're not alone. I think that anybody that is on this call or listening to this call, you know, after is going to agree with you.
And your students are used to tell me exactly what I need to read so I can answer the questions on the test and pass. And we're trying to get away from that.
Oh, absolutely, and especially in K-12 in the U.S. I've got seniors that are trying to play the game of school so they can get a higher GPA, which gives them a better scholarship information, which gets them, a better ranking, which can get them into a better school than the person sitting next to them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that balancing act of trying to, I guess, for the lack of a better term, serve two masters.
And I know Miguel is going to hit that topic when we go to Mexico City 2 weeks from now for our National Reunion of all professors of the tech, or at least all of us plantas, where I think the largest discussion we're going to have, and we're having this in our own Facebook at Work group, is grading. And I'm pretty sure we have a grade inflation problem like most schools, and we're trying to get our heads around how to deal with it. And you can't deal with it at a teacher level, because if I just drop my grades to something reasonable, but nobody else does, then I'm screwed and I'm the bad guy.
Absolutely.
Or the minimum point you need to go on exchange or get this scholarship or some other thing the student wants disappears because we're dropping the grade, but the other scales don't go with it.
Right.
So it's a really complex system, and just doing this by ourselves without engaging the student in this work, I'm trying to figure out how to adjust my self-grading system with abolished grading, and I'm really struggling with how to do that without everybody getting 100%.
Yeah.
It didn't happen last semester, but that's the immediate reaction from my colleagues is, everyone will just get 100 if they choose their own grade.
Yeah, I totally, Miguel can jump in here too, but that's a huge issue, obviously, everywhere. And one thing that we decided to do, and like you said, Ken, it was the entire department that had to do this, is we, oh gosh, now 6 years ago, switched the entire English department over to standards-based grading. And we created rubrics and, did tons of research, worked with Marzano, and came up with a standards-based grading system. Which also the kids did not like at first because it ruins the game of school. But from an educator standpoint, it lets me give a point in time, snapshot of where that student is towards mastery in that, on that objective.
Right. That's tricky.
It's a sticky wicket.
Oh, yeah. Thoughts, Miguel?
Yeah, sorry, I've been trying to really grasp the concept of intentional content at the beginning. Now, what you've been mentioning, and I agree completely with you, because we always look here in tech, like the lone fighter. We feel alone sometimes, because there are so many people really not looking at you very well, because you mentioned this flipping thing, and they immediately think that you just want to relax a bit on the marking and on the evaluation system for the students. And I also find that the students have this very, very deep in their heads that, is this going to affect my grading, this video, this other content?
Yeah. Is
it going to be included in the exam? If not, then I will not waste my time getting into it. So this is, as you mentioned, it's a very, very complex system. It's very many variables involved. And what I have found, because my courses are very, very mathematical in a way that they have to solve many operations, and they really have to solve many exercises. And I do post my videos, but I also try to include some content that is like joking and trying to ease the tension of the topic, and also the students feel a bit more relaxed to solve the exercises. But sometimes I am suggesting that they research for apps in their mobile phones that solve the same kind of problem. And I found this very motivating for them, because sometimes I suggest an application or in Android, and they said, what is the equivalent in Apple system? And they have to look for it, and they sometimes come with results that are better than application I suggested in the first place. So I don't know. I think this thing is evolving so fast that sometimes I feel outdated because they do work with their mobile phones better than me. But I don't know if I can make one just comment is that students, as you mentioned, they are very, very interested in their GPA, in their promedio, we call it here, and their scholarship and all that. And one way I have found to motivate flipping is that since I started doing it or start having some resources for them, all the tutorials that I was giving in the office are minimized. I have like 1/10 now of people coming to my office because the majority of them, they find the help they need on the resources
That's awesome.
I have available for them. And for me, maybe flipping was a result of all the other administrative or management things I have to do with my work. And sometimes I was not there for them, and obviously this was affecting me in my evaluation from the students. With flipping and with all these resources, intentional content that I have available for them, I have minimized this, and usually people who come here, they are looking for something extra, or people who are completely lost, who are not
and I think
following. Yeah.
There's the key, Miguel, is if you've empowered your students to go out and do the learning without waiting for you to drive it, and that's definitely the key, to have access to a virtual Miguel in some way.
Yes, that's correct.
And I found actually that my office hours have increased since I've done this, but I think it's because there's the other factor that because I work a lot with my students one-on-one, I've gained their confidence more, and they're not afraid to go see the teacher in the office. Like there's that cultural thing of being afraid to go to that building over there, especially when it's up on the 4th floor and the elevator doesn't work and they got to hoof it up. So that's changed my time with my students. I really think the biggest resistance from teachers to flipping or any kind of change to their pedagogy is the time that it is required to do it, and that's why I think intentional content has a big win here. Is there a bunch of stuff we can free up where we're just assigning assignments which are eating the students' time and then eating my time marking it? That if I just eliminate that, oh my goodness, there's all that time I want.
Absolutely, and that's so important. And that's that reflection point of, why am I giving this homework to my students? Is it really necessary? And if it's not, then why in the heck am I doing it? I'm grading it and putting it in the grade book, and no.
No fun at all. My wife's just coming in. Hello. Lost my train of thought there. Going through the list here, seeing if there's any comments coming in.
I think going back to what you guys were talking about, focusing on this intentional content, if you make it intentional and your students see it as intentional, then that's where you get your buy-in. That's what Miguel was saying as well, is that, if they don't have to do something for credit, I mean, they're smart kids, they're going to figure out they can do it another way. Which is great if they get the information, but we want them to learn something. We have to hold them accountable for that. And we can't, like you said, I think in week 1, we can't send them home with information and then reteach it in the classroom, because they'll figure that out too.
Right. Then they don't read.
Right.
Because they're efficient. They're not lazy. They're efficient.
Correct.
And I think if we bring back the whole point of the education social and having a good relationship with your students is key. It does improve your evaluations as well, because we know that if someone likes us, they're more likely to evaluate us nice, even if the question's not about that. So that's always a big win there. What was I going to say in that aspect? So in intentional content, actually spending some time with your students, having a kind of timeout in class and say, let's look at this topic. Let's look at these suggestions I have of how we can learn these topics. And get feedback from your students on whether they think that's just busy work, or whether that's interesting to them, or whether they can suggest something else. It's actually giving them a voice and giving them a little bit more chance to grab that empowerment and jump onto the self-taught bandwagon.
Yeah, it goes back to I think it goes back to communication with the students. You know, at the beginning of a unit, these are the concepts that I want you to know by the end of the unit. And you can either, you know, watch the videos, hear some concepts, things that you can read. You know, I can help you along, or you can research it on your own. But the bottom line is, it's your education, it's your learning, and they have to see that, and they have to own that.
And you can get your students to be creative. They can make cartoons, they can make animations, they can do whatever drives their curiosity in terms of learning the content. That's the big key there. And I've seen some wins. It's just really, as Miguel says, it's hard to get the students past that barrier of, well, if it's not worth points, then I'm not doing it.
Right.
And that always, over the last 20 years, has brought me to, okay, let's just stop class and have a therapy session, and let's talk about why the hell are you here in my classroom, and why are you studying this degree? And that just opens the floodgates of what's the motivation of why I'm here studying. And sometimes that is a watershed moment. Sometimes it just makes things a little bit worse for me. But that's really, we got to look at the motivation of why students want to be there. And I think they do want to learn, or they wouldn't want to be there. There's the odd student who's in school because their parents made them go to school, or university's the next step after high school, and they're kind of floundering. But most of them have chosen the degree they want to study.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I've been reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and I've meant to read the book for a long time and I haven't. And he often quotes Nietzsche, and to paraphrase Nietzsche, it's you know, if you know the why, then you can, you know, get through or do anyhow. And I think that's the key, is that our students have to understand the why.
I'm just reading someone else's blog post. There's a comment here from Juan Carlos in his blog post. Now, remember, I invite you to go to the course page, click on the blogs link on the right, and look at other people's assignment. And so he's writing about his initial hopes for the course. Hope they will forget me, but not the material covered. After all, they're the ones starring in the film. And I found that interesting, because I see it the other way, where he's hoping that the students remember the content and not him. And I think if we reflect on, and I always do this exercise where I ask students to name their heroes of teaching or something, and it's never because, wow, they just gave me these awesome standardized tests, or that homework assignment that I got. They don't remember that. They might remember the content, but they remember the relationship with the teacher. And that's definitely a win there. So I'm wondering, I should put a comment there on Juan Carlos's blog post about number 5 and see what his thoughts are there.
I've been thinking of something that maybe is off topic, but now that you're mentioning this blog post, Ken, and I have found, I don't know if any of you have the same experience, that I needed to remove my tie and my jacket and to dress in a different way to approach the students with all this flipping, because otherwise they would not believe me. I would feel like I'm playing a role that is not what they are expecting, with all this modernity of teaching and all this content available for them that is not conventional. And if I approach them, because I have to wear a suit sometimes here at work, dressed like that, it's not the same result as when I come and I'm dressed with a T-shirt, and they feel me one of them, just exactly like you.
I go like this.
And maybe I can, we can start another session, another hangout later on with the intentional dressing code.
It's funny, Miguel, because that might come up. I mean, it's already come up. The dress code at the Tec de Monterrey was.
Yeah.
We were told we don't have to wear suits and ties, and I'm like, yeah, well, yes. But at the middle management level, there's other rules that apply within the context. But I think what your point is, I have that same reaction. If someone shows up in a suit and tie, I immediately don't trust them. But that's just my hack school background. And I think the students need to trust us. Some of them might trust you better in a suit and tie. I know there might be MBA students that aren't going to trust some guy dressed like me. So I think you've got to find that trust level and attack it that way.
But my beard has helped me be trusted by the students better than the managers.
Well, there's that.
This guy's crazy, but somehow the students feel, I don't know, like better, that, I don't know, more confident with me. That I don't really follow the standards that they expect me, or I'm breaking the model, the role model they see I should be. I don't know.
Right. I think the tech wants us to be careful that it's not a friendship relationship, and I respect that. But I think it's important for our students to see us as humans, to realize that we like music, we like food, we like riding a motorcycle, or playing video games, or anything that makes us more human to our students and has a connection is definitely a win in my book.
Well, that kind of goes back to the last week's learning culture.
Mm-hmm.
Or even back to flexible environment. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you want to create, that safe environment where kids can take risks, where they can own their own learning and have failures, but still have major successes at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And I think this comes to your icebreaker, your first week activities and exposure to your students is really key here. This is where I do that activity where they stand on the chairs and they scream, "It's okay to fail," and I record it and I post it. And I do that, and I also ask them to share about, I have first semester students usually, and I ask them, which degree are you studying, why are you studying this degree, and are you really sure this is the degree that you want to study? Kind of like leading questions to get them to share about why they're doing what they're doing and why they're here, and I think that helps kind of open up that relationship, and that's key as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. My icebreakers, I tend to do simile for my first semester students. So English is like something, and then they have to explain it. Like, English is like a box of chocolates, and you never know what you're going to get. But they don't do that. But it is something kind of fun and lighthearted. But similes are a very powerful literary tool too, because they could actually, in a very risk-free environment, give a little insight into how they feel. English is like the Black Plague. That's definitely going to give me a look into that student and where they are.
Now, we have this one degree that's a combination of mechanical, electrical, and computing. It's called mechatronics, and I always wondered why students. There were so many that wanted to study this degree, and I finally figured it out because one student explained in his blog post that he basically wanted to be Iron Man. So that really explained to me the boom in popularity of this degree program. I finally got it.
We had the same question here. One student arriving and asking, I just want to study the same program that Iron Man studied. So exactly. I don't care what the name is. I just want to be Iron Man.
And so I finally understood. If I didn't let my students share why they were studying and what they were studying, it wouldn't work. But these open up other things. I find out that students are musicians. I find out that they one is a competitive swimmer, but she doesn't anymore. And I saw her in Starbucks the other day, 2 years later, and I was asking her if she went back to do some more swimming. And so opening up these possible connections for the hallway conversations really help us as well. Well, I think we have 12:30, so I'm going to wrap up for today. Anyone who wants to join us tomorrow, we're on again, internet connections working fine, Thursday evening, 8 p.m. my time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're still on DT. And we did this every week. This is week 3. Week 4 is the last week. We'll wrap up with P, which is for professional. P is professional, not professional development, professional educator.
Yep.
And we'll wrap up next week with the last week, and anyone who is behind, you can still catch up. Obviously, we don't want everyone just to do everything at the last minute, but jump in. I really, really invite people to read others' blog posts, check their videos. You don't have to comment. I think it's useful to read other people's work and reflect on it, feel that I'm not alone in this at least, and then put that into your writings and your thoughts. And hey, bonus points, give them a thank you on their blog post, or at least some constructive feedback in there. So I'll wrap up for today. Thanks again to Christine, to April, to Miguel, and everybody have an excellent afternoon. And we'll see you all probably tomorrow evening.
Yep.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.